A very good evening. From stories around the world to stories here at home, this is the National News Broadcast. I'm Vidushni Sadish Kumar.
I'm Movin Hettiarachi and here are today's headlines. Budget 2021 passed with two-thirds majority. Prime Minister says the public has gladly accepted the economic reformations of the government. 11 deceased inmates of the Mahara prison have been identified. A presidential task force to resolve issues pertaining to prisons. COVID-19 recoveries in the country exceed 22,000 mark. Another 460 recovered patients have been sent home. The highest COVID-19 related deaths recorded during the last 24 hours in the world, reported from the USA. Now on to those and more stories in detail. On today's top story, the budget presented for the year 2021 has been passed in the Parliament with a majority of 97 votes. 151 votes were obtained in favour of the budget, 54 voted against. The second reading of the budget, which commenced in November 17, lasted 20 consecutive days. The head of expenditure for the Ministry of Finance was taken up for debate during the third hearing of the budget, also known as the committee stage debate of the budget. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa delivered the speech in reply in his capacity as the Minister of Finance. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa said that the country is depending on the outside world, often become helpless amid such global crisis situations, and that if the country's economy had been domestically uplifted, the government would have been able to successfully face such crisis situations, adding that this has been the focal point in establishing a domestic economy, domestic agricultural development through vistas of prosperity policy statement. The Prime Minister pointed out that the objectives of the budget differ from previous budgets. He said the budget has been solely reserved to uplift the domestic farmers, domestic industrialists and the domestic producers in order to build a nation which could compete with the rest of the world, while being resistant to present-day catastrophes. The Prime Minister said that the critics of the government have alleged that the budget has failed to fulfill the requirements of the general public. He said that the government will not initiate futile projects and target future elections as they would sincerely render services for the masses. The Prime Minister further said that previous Finance Minister created a new tariff under the guise of a Rajapaksa tariff. He said that due to this tariff, business community and industrialists in the country were discouraged. He also said that some claimed that the country had declined in debt rankings. However, he added that the government had to pay billions of dollars before October 2nd. He said that the government was responsible to completing debt installments in time due to the existing economic management policies. He added that the government was successful in maintaining the value of the rupee without causing any depreciation amid the pandemic situation. He also said that the government is capable in competing with the global markets successfully in the present.
Well, on budget proposals, the government has decided to implement many proposals presented through Budget 2021 immediately following the approval of the budget in Parliament. The budget consists of proposals presented on the well-being of the state sector employees, small and medium-scale entrepreneurs, youth, dairy farmers and students. Accordingly, the government is expecting to implement the following proposals in the budget after gaining approval in the Parliament. Steps have been taken to reduce the maximum interest rates to 7% for the housing and property loan facilities provided through state banks for state sector employees. Accordingly, the loan interest charged from the state sector employees for the acquired and yet to be acquired housing and property loans amounting up to maximum of 500,000 rupees will be at 3%, while the interest rate for the category between 1 million to 3 million will be reduced to 7%. Therefore, a state sector employee who has obtained a housing or property loan for an amount of 2 million rupees will receive up to a maximum of 2,500 rupees worth benefit per month through this initiative. Another proposal approved in the budget is the implementation of the concessionary loan facilities to obtain solar-powered electricity facilities. Under the proposal, the government is expected to provide loan facilities at an interest rate of 4% from January 1st for the installation of solar power generating equipments in order to reduce the electricity bills of the state sector employees. Small and medium-scale business community is also eligible to acquire this loan facility to install solar power generating equipments in their respective business premises. Another expected proposal is to implement the distribution of vouchers for footwear for bhikkhus and students receiving Pirivan education. Accordingly, steps will be taken to distribute footwear vouchers for bhikkhus and students studying in rural, backward and remote areas in the country. Granting of working capital loan facilities to uplift small and medium-scale business affected from the COVID-19 outbreak in the country is another proposal presented through the budget. Financial provisions worth 18,600 million rupees have been provided to state and private sector banks to provide working capital loans to re-empower the small and medium-scale entrepreneurs impacted from COVID-19. Steps will be taken to bear the expenditures of the state sector employees who had been contracted with the COVID-19 disease through the Agrahara insurance coverage. Financial facilities also expected to be facilitated for young entrepreneurs to commence new businesses. Accordingly, loan facilities will be granted under concessionary interests. The relevant loan scheme will be initiated through Divisional Development Bank. Dairy farming community also expected to be encouraged for the development and promotion of the domestic dairy production. Therefore, Kirishakti loan scheme is expected to be initiated through the budget proposal. Accordingly, concessionary loan facilities to a maximum of 1 million rupees within conditions will be provided for dairy farmers. Under the budget, loan facilities expected to be provided for the employees of the state and private sectors to purchase housing facilities.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa instructed relevant authorities to look humanely at the grievances of the prisoners and address them immediately by providing necessary assistance to them. President made these remarks at a discussion held at Presidential Secretariat this morning to look into shortcomings and issues prisoners and recommend solutions. More than 12,000 people are incarcerated due to drug addiction. President emphasized the need to pay special attention to them and formulate a rehabilitation program. President Rajapaksa instructed officials to explore the possibility of constructing a prefabricated prisons in the so far identified locations in order to eliminate overcrowding in prisons. The need to study the models of foreign prisons and take immediate measures to provide facilities was stressed by the President. A large number of people are kept in remand due to the delays of analysts, Attorney General and police departments. The President also pointed out that the relevant agencies, including customs, police, prisons and rehabilitation, should establish a presidential task force and take steps to resolve existing problems. Minister of Justice M.U.M. Ali Sabri, State Minister of Prison Rehabilitations Rohan Ratwatte, Secretary to the President P.B. Jayasundara, secretaries to the relevant ministries and security heads were present during the discussion. Meanwhile, Chief Epidemiologist of Dr. Sudat Samaravira briefed the set of guidelines to be followed during the Christmas and holiday season in order to curb further spread of the COVID-19 outbreak in the country. He made these remarks at a media briefing held today.
Now we are reaching for a festival time, the Christmas and New Year holidays, but this is not the time to celebrate as usual these holidays. So because of that, the Director General of Health Services has issued a press release yesterday advising people how to utilize maximally this New Year holidays without contributing to the spread of COVID-19. This includes that Director General of Health Services advises people that to restrict as much as possible going out of the home, as well as that if you are going for shopping, that limit one person per home for shopping, as well as that use the closest shopping complexes or shops that to your house for shopping. Don't go everywhere roaming around. And also if there is a queue or something like that in the crowded place, that you have to maintain 1 meter distance and should wear a face mask. If somebody is violating these things, that you can ask that person to correct that. It is your duty as well as it is your right. And also that we know that elderly people will get this disease that very easily. So because of that, elderly people should not that accompany to places where the people gather. And also that in your house, if there are some elderly people, that you should restrict the visitors coming to your house. And also when you are greeting the people, please use telephone or a method of distance, keeping the distance. Should not try to shake hands or hug that our usual way greeting at a special occasion. This is not the time for that.
Well, taking a look at how the world combats COVID-19 pandemic, the global number of confirmed COVID-19 cases have risen to 68.9 million thus far, with the death toll reaching 1.57 million. Meanwhile, the United States recorded more than 3,000 deaths in the latest 24-hour period and the highest total in a single day anywhere in the world. Accordingly, a total of 3,124 deaths were recorded, with an additional 221,276 cases identified yesterday. In the meantime, the U.S. healthcare system is under considerable pressure as hospitalizations from COVID-19 were also at a record yesterday with 106,000. Some states, including California, Texas and Rhode Island, have been setting up field hospitals in order to cope with the potential overflow of patients as intensive care units across the country fill up. Many experts have attributed the huge spike to people relaxing their precautions at Thanksgiving. The USA remains the worst affected country in the world, with more than 15.39 million recorded cases and over 289 deaths. The number of COVID-19 cases in the Americas has made up nearly half of the global total, with 28.8 million recorded cases, while Europe and Southeast Asia have reported 20.8 million and 11.1 million cases respectively. South Africa has entered a second wave of the pandemic as the country registered 7,000 new cases yesterday. At its peak in July, the worst-hit country in Africa was registering an average of 12,000 cases daily. By September, the numbers had dropped to below 1,000 a day. The majority of new cases have been found in the 15 to 19-year age group, while the south of the country has been hit hardest recently. More than 22,000 people have lost their lives to coronavirus in South Africa. Other African nations, including Zimbabwe and Kenya, have also reported new surges of infections. India recorded 31,521 new COVID cases in the last 24 hours, taking the total number of active coronavirus cases in the country to 9.76 million. With 412 new deaths, the casualties amounted to 141,700. In the meantime, several Indian pharmaceutical companies are working to develop at least 8 anti-COVID formulations as the world's largest producer of vaccines prepares for a massive response to hit the coronavirus pandemic. Meanwhile, the UK economy has grown by 0.4% in October as the recovery continued to slow against a backdrop of rising COVID-19 cases. The economy continues to remain below its previous size as recorded prior to the pandemic. The UK has been recovering from a record slump earlier this year induced by the first coronavirus lockdown. However, output is expected to shrink again in November after England's second shutdown forced firms to close.
Meanwhile, Britain's medicine regulator has advised people with a history of significant allergy reaction to refrain from receiving the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID jab. After 2 healthcare workers experienced symptoms after receiving the shot on Tuesday, the precautionary advice was given after the pair responded adversely. Following their shots on the first day of the mass vaccination rollout in the UK, National Health Services England said yesterday.
Britain's medicine regulator has advised that people with a history of significant allergies do not get Pfizer-BioNTech's COVID-19 vaccine. This warning came after 2 National Health Service workers reported severe adverse reactions on the first day of vaccine rollout. Both workers are recovering, according to the NHS Medical Director, Stephen Powers. Britain began mass vaccinating its population on Tuesday, starting with the elderly and the frontline workers. Pfizer had said people with history of allergic reactions were excluded from the late-stage trials. The new guidelines from Britain's medicine regulator The MHRA also include a much broader segment of people that should not take the vaccine.
Well, news from the USA. The influx of coronavirus patients in a small Southern California hospital highlights nationwide struggles in the USA to increase patient capacity and provide quality care while awaiting approval of the COVID vaccine.
Like many hospitals across the U.S., Providence St. Mary Medical Center in Apple Valley, California, is running out of space. The influx of coronavirus patients has forced staff to convert the main lobby into a COVID-19 unit. Randy Lovelace is the interim director of the emergency department.
We've had to wall this off with a temporary structure to make this an entire area of negative pressure so that we can hold more COVID patients here.
The community hospital within Southern California's San Bernardino County has a 212-bed capacity. As of Tuesday, 108 of its patients are COVID-19 positive, and in other parts of the hospital, many patients are waiting in improvised areas for beds. Meanwhile, patients are being screened in the parking lot before they are admitted into a tented area for triage. 42-year-old Melissa Leon was hospitalized on Sunday. The mother of two who also has diabetes says she took all precautions and is nervous to go home to her 10-year-old son.
Now I have to go home and take care of my son and make sure he's okay. You know, I need to get him tested. I need to quarantine myself. I need to figure this all out now. I mean, I don't want to scare my son, but he's already scared. He's been scared since the whole thing started.
A scarcity of hospital beds was behind California's decision to reimpose lockdowns across the state this week. But relief could be coming soon in the form of a soon-to-be-approved vaccine, which the FDA could greenlight in the coming days. And Providence St. Mary Medical Center will be ready. It's already purchased a new freezer unit for vaccine storage.
Well, news from home on the corona situation now. Head of the National Operations Center for the Prevention of COVID-19 Outbreak, Army Commander Lieutenant General Shavendra Silva says attention has been directed to lift the isolation status from the housing schemes which are currently isolated. Testings to identify COVID-19 patients within the housing schemes have been increased accordingly, and the Army commander said that they are expecting to lift the isolation status from these housing schemes within the next couple of days based on the test results. PCR and rapid antigen testing within the housing schemes to identify COVID-19 patients have been increased from December 8th. 14,336 PCR tests were conducted yesterday. The total number of PCR tests conducted so far is at 959,388. A group of 33 fully recovered patients have left Angoda COVID-19 Treatment Center. The recovered patients have been identified as residents from Colombo District. 15 fully recovered patients have left COVID-19 treatment centers in the Pulnar District today, and the recovered patients have been identified as residents from the Colombo District. A total of 4,701 COVID-19 recoveries have been reported in the country since the beginning of this month until today. A total of 461 COVID-19 recoveries were reported today. The percentage of fully cured COVID-19 patients is at 73.29 as a number. It is 22,261. The percentage of those continuously undergoing treatment is at 26.24 as a number. This stands at 7,970. Another 300 corona patients were identified in the island today. Out of this number, 279 included close associates of the patients in the Paliaguda cluster. The remaining 21 patients have been identified as those connected to the present cluster. Army Commander Lieutenant General Shavendra Silva mentioned that Sri Lankans arriving from foreign countries will be directed to a 14-day quarantine period and will be released after a PCR test. Meanwhile, 2 COVID-19 related deaths were reported in the country yesterday. They have been identified as 20-year-old infant from Colombo 15 area and 62-year-old resident from Colombo 10.
Head of the Presidential Task Force for Economic Revival and Poverty Eradication, Basil Rajapaksa says the field of sports can be promoted on a grassroots level during the next year by fulfilling the sporting requirements of the youth and restructuring of the rural playgrounds in parallel to the Vadasamaga Yaligamata program. He made these remarks while speaking at a meeting with divisional, district and provincial level sports and youth affairs officers held at Temple Trees today. Head of the Presidential Task Force, Basil Rajapaksa, mentioned that the government is expecting to establish a sports economy while improving the skills and potentials of the youth in sports through the Vistas of Prosperity policy framework and obtain a mass contribution for the national economy. Financial provisions worth 8,264 million rupees have been allocated for sports and youth affairs in the country from this year's budget. This is the largest financial provision allocated for sports and youth affairs sector in the country's history. The head of the Presidential Task Force pointed out that Lanka Premier League tournament has rendered an enormous strength to the economy at a time when national economy has experienced a massive decline due to pandemic situation. He further said the complete mediation of sports and youth affairs officers is expected in the process of promote field of sports in a grassroots level. The head of the Presidential Task Force, Basil Rajapaksa, instructed the relevant officials to initiate sports clubs for each Gram Seva division while preparing a playground on the grassroots level and select suitable land plots for playgrounds with support of local sports clubs. Instructions were also directed to necessary measures after carrying out discussions with provincial education zonal officers and Ministry of Education when restructuring the playgrounds in school levels. Minister Namal Rajapaksa said government is expecting a development in the grassroots and school level sporting during the next year. The minister also mentioned that Grama Seva divisions and district level tournaments will be organized in revamped playgrounds. State Minister Thenuka Vidhanagama was also present at this occasion.
The police have said that bodies of the 11 inmates who had died from the Mahara prison clashes have been identified by their respective relatives at present. Police media spokesman DIG Ajit Rohana mentioned that 7 bodies kept at the Ragama Hospital mortuary were identified yesterday, while the bodies of the other 4 inmates were identified today. Police media spokesman DIG Ajit Rohana said that the deceased inmates who had been imprisoned over offences related to illegal drugs have been identified as residents from Minuangoda, Biyagama, Jala, Enderamulla, Valiveria, Anguruvatata, Wattala, Kalaniya and Sapgaskanda areas. According to the order of the Wattala magistrate, the bodies of the deceased inmates have been sent to IDH hospital in accordance to health guidelines for a multidisciplinary post-mortem. Meanwhile, the committee appointed to probe the incident has said that the congestion within the prison cells have contributed largely on the clashes occurred in the Mahara prison. Representative of the committee, President's Council U.R. De Silva, said that the details in this regard have been presented through the preliminary report on the incident.
New members of the Election Commission assumed duties today. The event took place at the Office of Election Commissions in Rajagirian. The new chairman of the Election Commission, Nimal G. Punchiheva, along with the former chairman of the Election Commission, Mahinda Deshapriya, and senior DIG Deshabandhu Tennakon were present at this occasion. Meanwhile, the members of the National Police Commission, including its new chairman, former IGP Chandra Fernando, assumed duties at their respective head offices at the National Police Commission. The head office of the commission is situated at number 9 BFCH premises.
For the first time, Ministry of Education has taken steps to provide new schools for the students enrolled into grade 6 for the year 2021 based on the grade 5 scholarship examination results via online methodology. Well, this initiative was commenced officially at the Ministry of Education today. Minister Professor G.L. Peris was also present at this occasion. The applications had already been called for the provision of new schools for the students who had qualified beyond the district cutoff marks at the recently concluded grade 5 scholarship examination. Accordingly, the principals will include the information mentioned in the relevant applications, including the names of the schools applied by students to the data system. The Minister of Education has indicated that the opportunity has been provided for all principals to include the relevant information from today until December 24th in Sinhala or Tamil medium. This service, sponsored by Mobitel Private Limited at a cost of 7.5 million rupees, has been provided to the Ministry of Education on free of charge. A total of 264 students sat for the recently concluded examination, out of which 47,193 students have qualified beyond the cut-off marks to apply for a new school.
Envoys of the United Kingdom and Canada have assured Sri Lanka that their respective governments direct no tolerance for terrorist activities or glorification of terrorism in their countries. The Minister of Foreign Relations, Dinesh Gunawardena, met with British High Commissioner Sarah Halton and Canadian High Commissioner David Mackinnon this week to discuss matters of bilateral importance. The minister addressed the mutual concern of security of countries, particularly in the context of increasingly visible activities in the past few weeks by non-state actors engaged in the glorification of terrorist acts of the LTTE. Serious note was taken by the envoys regarding the use of children in terrorist propaganda activities, leading to radicalization of new generation of youth and children. The High Commissioners conveyed strong positions of their government that there was no tolerance for terrorism activities, no glorification of terrorism in their countries. And recent spate of non-state entities in no way reflected a change in their official position in such matters. Minister Gunawardena thanked the envoys to continued commitment in the global fight against terrorism, including commitment to ensure non-resurgence of LTTE, which remains proscribed as a terrorist group in both the United Kingdom and Canada. He noted that being a Commonwealth countries, the relation between Sri Lanka, the United Kingdom and Canada are deep-rooted, steadfast and wide-ranging, and expressed confidence of the continued close cooperation. Foreign Secretary Admiral Professor Jayanath Kolambage and senior officials of the Foreign Ministry were present at this meeting. That's it for tonight's English News Update. Thank you for joining us. Good night.
Good night.